Today we have Lois Schaefer, Director and Developer of the REST program, as our guest. Welcome, Lois. We're so happy that you're able to discuss Respite with us today. We know that Respite is considered to be a cornerstone service for certain groups of caregivers. Can you tell us what REST program is and how you got started with it?
Yes, REST stands for Respite, Education, and Support Tools. Our mission is to deliver education and support to those offering caregivers a break. And so we've translated our materials into Spanish. It's a train-the-trainer format, and those trainers can train companions in an 8-hour or 4-hour model. So we believe that a trained workforce is cost-effective, a trained respite workforce, with a blend of paid and unpaid workers is cost-effective, and it allows us to keep seniors in their homes because people don't want strangers in their home. That's really how we got started. Mm-hmm. People don't want strangers in their homes. So if we can train their informal networks of support, then they can stay home with friends, families, and neighbors.
Mm-hmm. People that they know and trust.
Yes, exactly.
And could you define respite and why it's beneficial for family and informal caregivers?
Yes, respite, there's a lifespan respite definition of respite, and that is planned or emergency services for a child or an adult with special needs, and in order to give the family caregiver a relief. So Sue, the reality is caregiving is bad for your health. 55% of family caregivers feel overwhelmed by the task at hand, and 25 to 50% of them meet the major criteria for depression versus 6.7% of the general population. So it's a much needed service. And also when caregivers get respite, they report improved health, they have more social opportunities. So it's just something, it's that thing that just gets them out and gives them a break and lets them recharge and come back in and really provide the best care they can for their loved one.
Right, very important. Next question for you is what types of respite is available in communities?
Well, there's many types of respite. There's informal respite, which a lot of caregivers are utilizing right now at home. They have, a neighbor come over and sit with their dad while they run to the grocery store or something like that. There's adult day centers all over the nation right now, and wow, are those a godsend, because they allow caregivers to go to work, right? So they can still contribute to our society financially, and they can get that break for their loved one. There's emergency respite. Most of the time caregivers will use like a hospital for that, but there are residential beds in long-term care nursing homes, and they're respite beds where you could put your loved one there for a week if you needed to go away somewhere. There's faith-based ministry. Those are actually popping up a lot right now. There's faith-based organizations that want to have a drop-off respite program once a week for their aging population.
Right, right. And is there any magic bullet in terms of how often a family caregiver, a primary caregiver, should use respite care services?
It's really up to the caregiver, right? It depends on what type of service they're using. So if somebody was using an adult day center, that might be all they use, right? Because they're gone during the day and then they, bunker in on the weekend. But there was a study by the National Respite Coalition, and it was done by the Lifespan Respite Task Force. No, this wasn't a study done by them, it was reported by them. And so what they found is that a caregiver caring for someone with dementia, and we have to keep in mind 64% of our caregivers in our nation are caring for someone who's aging. Mm-hmm. So out of those 64%, if they received 4 hours of respite 1 day a week for 1 year, 78% of them reported increased emotional health. 50% of the care receivers had an improvement in their emotional health. Because really, the care receivers are kind of isolated if you're getting respite one-on-one. And if all you see is your caregiver, I mean, that's great. You love them. They're part of your family and your network. But boy, they need to kind of expand their social horizon as well. And then 40% of those people reported that they would delay placement or not place their loved one at all. So that's really impactful. That feels like that might be the magic bullet.
Right.
So the frequency, I think, is really up to the caregiver. And but what we know is that some caregivers don't self-identify. So they're like, I'm just taking care of my dad. I don't need a break. I mean, this is what we do. We're family, right? But they do need a break. And they can't necessarily identify that when they're in the heat of the battle.
Absolutely.
So it's nice to train their friends, neighbors, other family members, because they can help them and say, gosh, Sue, you know what? You look like you need a break.
Yeah.
Why don't you go out with your friends tonight? We got dad, right? So that's the frequency, I think, is, you know, what it is. But that's one piece of one statistic that we do have.
Very good. What does REST program evaluation show in terms of positive impact of respite on family caregivers? I know you had some really powerful statistics about respite in general.
So we've been collecting data for 3 years now, and we're an evidence-supported program. And the statistics that we find is that caregivers report so there's a caregiver survey that we give them. So there's 12 stress-related symptoms listed on this survey. Before respite, caregivers report the average is 5 of these stress-related symptoms that they're feeling. After receiving respite, and not even for that year, just for a short time, those symptoms go down to about 2.8. So it's their perceived stress. So we know that your perception of your health impacts your health, right?
Absolutely.
And so if we can, if our caregivers are reporting improvement in their stress, their perceived stress, that's fabulous. They also reported, obviously, more opportunities for social engagement. And then, again, reported a decrease in placement of their loved one, and that's our goal. So in addition to that, we also do a 6-month post-survey with every REST companion that takes our course. So what we try to, not all of them take the survey, and sometimes we have a hard time reaching people, but of the ones that we have, and it's over 800 of them, they, after 6 months, still report that they feel knowledgeable and confident to provide respite to somebody, which is fabulous. So it tells us they're retaining the information. REST is based on experiential learning. So there's a lot of stories and rich discussion that happen in the training that I think then helps them to kind of keep the information loaded in. So at this point, we have 500 REST trainers in our nation who have trained 5,000 REST companions. These are our boots on the ground. These guys, these companions, have provided for over 14,000 hours of respite care to caregivers, and when we monetize that, that comes out to be $173,000. That's the impact REST has made in just such a short time.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Lois. We learned a lot about respite. And for more information, please see the resources on the screen. Thank you.